welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. And let's just say that I recently learned some things that's going to make me do some reevaluation on one Pat Mahomes. But before we get to that, you know what time it is. If you're here already on YouTube and you haven't already, please click that subscribe, that like, that notification bell. Please keep those subscribes coming. Keep those likes coming. We appreciate all that. Helps us rise in the algorithm. Also, if you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you like it. Make sure you give us that 5-star review and leave a comment. We love that. Helps us interact with you guys even better. And speaking of interactions with you, if you're here on YouTube, go ahead and check out the community tab. I made a post there asking what day would be better for you guys to do live call-in shows, Saturday or Sunday. So definitely looking forward to the feedback on that. Once we get the feedback on that, we'll kind of work out the time that's best for everybody because, you know, the goal is maximum engagement, right? I want you guys here. I want you guys calling in. I want you guys listening. I want to be talking to you guys. I want to get those likes and all that good stuff, right? So we're definitely looking to make this show grow. Appreciate everything y'all do. And let's get right to it. So Pat Mahomes, if you know me, one thing about me is I try to stand on certain principles. And one of those principles is if you're a man and you say something and you find out that you're wrong, you shouldn't be afraid to admit that you're wrong. And in my comments back to a lot of you guys, I've made it clear that if you can prove me wrong on something I said or something I said is proven wrong or demonstrated to me, I have no problem with coming here in front of the entire world and saying, hey, I was wrong. I got to fix that. I got to readjust my thinking. And I think this is one of those cases. A couple of days ago, I did a show and it was basically talking about Brady and Mahomes and Michael Jordan and LeBron. And it was talking about how Mahomes is much closer in terms of chasing Brady for GOAT status than LeBron James is for chasing Michael Jordan for GOAT status. Now, how you feel about that, that's something different. But the point is, I did that show under the impression that Pat Mahomes was now clearly the number 2 guy in terms of chasing Brady. And I found out in the interim that, well, that's just not true. Now, Pat Mahomes, we know, has had a great career already, but what's the defining measuring stick among NFL quarterbacks? It's very different from other positions. It's not stats. It's not games played or any of that. It is Super Bowls. And Tom Brady, now, don't get me wrong, Tom Brady has all the stats, plus he has 7 Super Bowls. But the difference maker is that he himself, as an individual, has more Super Bowl rings and Super Bowl championships than any franchise in league history. And that is phenomenal. Now, Pat Mahomes, as we said, has had arguably the finest first 7 years of a career than any quarterback who's ever played. We know he's one of the most physically gifted and all that. I get it. But in terms of him being next in line for the GOAT, well, looks like recency bias has reared its ugly head again. Now, I was checking out The Odd Couple with Chris Broussard and Rob Parker the other night, and Broussard was out, and former NFL safety Kerry Rhodes was in for him, and Rob Parker really dropped some science. And I'm going to go ahead and play that for you now, and then we're going to come back and talk about it, because this was crazy, and this was what made me reassess the way I'm looking at Pat Mahomes. And that's not a slight on him, but check it out.
Patrick Mahomes has had a great career so far, right? There's no debate there. I'm not even sitting here. I'm not trying to tear down anything that he's done. But when it comes to Super Bowl, people talk about all the time, don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. And I get it. He's won 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
But the numbers don't match up for what people talk about. If I told you that out of 12 quarterbacks who have gone to multiple Super Bowls, where would you think Patrick Mahomes' quarterback rating would be? Where would he be in the 12 quarterbacks who have gone to multiple Super Bowls?
Well, right now, the emphasis you're putting on that multiple, I would say he's probably 8 on that list.
How about 12?
He's 12th on that list.
12th on the list. Earlier, I talked about Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
Terry Bradshaw won 4 Super Bowls, right?
Yes.
People look at Terry Bradshaw like it was all about the Steelers' defense.
Steel curtain. Yep.
Steel curtain. Terry Bradshaw was good. He was okay. He wasn't the stir that stirred the drink, you know what I mean, or anything like that.
Right.
His number, 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 112, 25.8.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Patrick Mahomes, of course, 4 Super Bowls. Terry Bradshaw was 4-0 and won 2 MVPs.
Yep.
Patrick Mahomes, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a passer rating of 85.2. He's 3-1, and he has Super Bowls in all 3, right?
Yep.
The MVPs.
Yep.
But I don't think anybody would believe that Terry Bradshaw's numbers are better than Patrick.
I mean,
This is my issue too.
yeah,
Like they want to leapfrog over Joe Montana
I know.
and
I know.
say that Mahomes is chasing Brady.
I know.
He's 3-1. Montana was 4-0. You know what his quarterback rating
What was his
was?
rating?
127.8. Mahomes is 85, and they say he's better than Joe Montana.
Wow. So that was some science Rob Parker dropped right there. And I think it speaks to the prisoner of the moment nature, the need for immediate gratification of the modern person, as well as the modern sports fan and the modern sports media. Now, again, no one is trying to say Pat Mahomes is not incredible. No one is trying to say he hasn't had an incredible 6-year run as a starter. No one is saying any of that because we know how great Mahomes is. We know how physically gifted and talented he is. We know how smart he is as a quarterback. All of those things. We know what a winner he is, clearly. Now, all that said, it's real interesting now when we go and we look at these numbers because we always want to anoint someone, right? When in basketball, you know what it is. It's LeBron and Mike. And so now we look at this football thing, Mahomes and Brady. Okay, could Brady not do some of the things that Mahomes could do? Absolutely. And that's one of the things I talked about in the other show, which really in a way makes it even more crazy how good Brady was because he wasn't a threat to get out with his legs, but he can slice and dice you from the pocket. Regardless, back to Mahomes. So Rob Parker first talked about a guy named Terry Bradshaw, the former starting quarterback, 4-time champion of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 4 championships in 6 years in the 1970s, one of the greatest dynasties in history, 4-6. That's crazy. Anyway, I always wondered when I was younger and was really like thinking about this football thing. I always wondered, why is it no one talks about Terry Bradshaw when they talk about the all-time great quarterbacks? And I think it's because he was crazy with the interceptions. Now, again, you got to take interceptions with a grain of salt from past generations when it comes to football, because when you can get hit the way those quarterbacks could, when you can get hit the way wide receivers could and really jammed, and they were a lot more lenient when it came to pass interference. We know that much like basketball, the NFL has changed a lot of the rules to proliferate offense and to make the game more exciting and fan friendly and not let defenses dominate so much. You're going to have a lot more interceptions. If you look at most of the all-time great quarterbacks, they've got a ton of interceptions. Doesn't mean they were bad, just means that the conditions weren't there to necessarily allow them to be able to stand back there in the pocket, pat the ball, and complete passes with impunity. Now, Terry Bradshaw, you heard the numbers. Most of the time when we talk about him and we think about the Steelers winning championships, we think about Franco Harris and the dominant running game. We think about the Steel Curtain defense, which was one of the greatest defenses of all time for a long time. And we say, okay, well, Terry Bradshaw, as good as he was, just kind of rode the wave. But Rob Parker just dropped the numbers, and, well, that's not the truth. It just isn't. And he did it in a much more physically difficult era. And so now you say, okay, Pat Mahomes is great. Is he on a Super Bowl level greater than Terry Bradshaw? We don't know. We're not sure. Yes, he's done amazing things. And again, no disrespect to Mahomes, but is he? Has he had to deal with what Terry Bradshaw has had to deal with? No, that's definitive. Meanwhile, Terry Bradshaw actually has better numbers in the Super Bowl than him. So something to think about. Now, if you want to, you have Terry Bradshaw now ahead of Pat Mahomes, because remember, Terry Bradshaw never lost a Super Bowl either. And then you have the guy before Brady that most people considered the greatest of all time. Of course, that's Joe Montana. And you also heard the numbers from Rob Parker on Joe Montana. 11 touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, 4 Super Bowl championships, no Super Bowl losses. Again, in an era where you could really hit receivers, you could really hit quarterbacks. And so maybe a lot of people are going to say now, well, okay, Joe Montana was great, cool, but he had Jerry Rice. Yeah, you're right. He had Jerry Rice. Oh, except for the fact that he won only 2 Super Bowls with Jerry Rice, and he won 2 Super Bowls without him. So that's something to think about. Arguably, if not definitively the greatest weapon ever at the wide receiver position in the NFL. And Joe Montana won 2 championships without him. I mean, that's something to think about, right? We know how great Jerry Rice was. It's not taking anything from him. No slight. But the fact is, you can't use Jerry Rice as an excuse to try and take away from Joe Montana because he did it without him. It's kind of like in basketball, people are going to talk about Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. Well, he won before KD, he won after KD, so we can't really even use that. No argument there. Anyway, so you've got Joe Montana, and again, the very simple one, undefeated in the Super Bowl. So we have to look at that. Now you start looking at Pat Mahomes. As great as he is, that big stat, he is 12th of 12 quarterbacks to have played in multiple Super Bowls when it comes to passer rating. That's something nobody talks about. And we know they like to use passer rating as a stat to measure quarterbacks. Passer rating was pretty much the it stat before QBR. They still use passer rating, but QBR is the main one now. But the point is, and don't ask me how they come up with these stats. I have no idea. Some crazy formula. But the point is, 12 out of 12. I mean, these are things that a guy like Nick Wright is never going to bring up. Why? Because it doesn't successfully push his narrative. It just doesn't. The fact that Pat Mahomes has 7 touchdowns and 5 picks in 4 Super Bowls. Yes, he's managed to win 3 of them, but again, something to think about. Mahomes is great, no doubt. And I want to say twice or 3 times now, twice against the 49ers, he's come back from double-digit deficits, and he also came back from a late game deficit last year against the Eagles to win that championship. So the point I'm trying to make is Mahomes, we know he's super clutch. He gets it done when need be. He makes the plays with need be, whether it's arms, whether it's with his legs. Nobody is saying any of that. And some people are probably going to look at this now like, damn, Bruce a hater. Now he hating on Mahomes. First he hated on LeBron. First, now he hating on Mahomes. No, I'm not. But when faced with new information, sometimes we got to adjust fire on what we think about things, right? You can't just, when the target is moved, you can't keep shooting at the same target in the same place. You're not going to hit anything. So now we find out that when it comes down to it, of quarterbacks who have been in the Super Bowl multiple times, Pat Mahomes is at the bottom in a key stat, and his numbers don't match up to the 2 guys who have won more than him and never lost. Well, I think we need to back off of this bit of he's chasing Brady for the GOAT and say, okay, probably he wins another one and has a good performance, then we leapfrog him over Bradshaw. He wins another one, have a good performance. Now you've got that argument because you put him on the same level with Joe Montana, Joe Cool. And then you can start talking about Brady. Right now, Brady is so far above, and this is not what I said a few days ago, but I didn't have this information a few days ago. Now I know. But Brady, that distance is a lot bigger than I thought. It's not here. It's here. So Pat Mahomes, you are amazing. You are great. You are clearly the best player in the NFL. You are easily already a top 10 quarterback of all time. Some people may have you top 5, and that's cool. I'm not here to argue that. But the point is, we jumped the guns a little bit, and we were victims of recency bias when we said, especially me, not we, I'm not even going to say we, I'm going to say me, when I said that you were chasing Brady for the greatest of all time. You're not there yet. You got more work to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's only going to push you to achieve more greatness, and we know how great you are. All right. What I want to know from you is, what do you think about what Rob Parker and I had to say? Do you think that Pat Mahomes is already better than Terry Bradshaw and Joe Montana? Do you think he's already eclipsed them, or do you think he has more work to do in terms of catching up to them so that he can then go chase Brady for the greatest of all time? Leave your comments in the comment section. Can't wait to hear from you. Make sure you hit that like, that subscribe. Make sure you're sharing the podcast. Can't wait to do these calls. Oh, and go in the community post and let me know what day is better for you, Friday or Saturday, for the live call-in shows. And then as soon as we get that done, then we'll find out what time is best for everybody, and we'll go ahead and try to set that up. All right. Tentatively, we're looking at not this weekend, but the following weekend to do our first live call-in show. Hopefully we can make that happen. So yeah, you do your part. I'll do mine. Can't wait to get back to you. I'll be back with you next episode, and I'm out. Peace.